As a child, I had experiences of being abducted. I'd lie awake in my bed all night in a state of hypervigilance, trying to observe the bedroom door, the closet door, windows and walls all around me at once, until I was so exhausted that I'd fall asleep. I have various memories of the little gray aliens grabbing me by the wrist to lead me around places outside of my bedroom, counting my spine. They'd run their fingers up each vertebrae on my back, and in my childlike mind, they were counting them. Entering my room through the walls, and so on. I'm terribly afraid of needles, and I'm always worried that the nurse is going to touch the bone of my arm with the needle. The small gray ones are about as tall as toddlers, 3 feet, I suppose. Classic gray, large heads, big insect eyes. Their torso and limbs are very slender, and you have difficulty figuring out how they stand and walk upright, carrying that large head. Their fingers are very long, and the long fingers in the eyes are the creepiest things about them. Being with them is like being in the same room as a very creepy doll or mannequin, except they move around and are alive. They have a very disturbing vibe about them. Their skin is gray and seems not to be flesh. It looks like it's made out of construction putty or something like that. They have no wrinkles and no musculature. Their skin doesn't wrinkle when they move, and you can't see muscles flexing or anything like that. They don't seem to have a personality or will. They're just like drones or something. I imagine that they probably stand in a closet when they are not working, but they still seem to be organic. They are not machines or robots. That skin and those eyes are their real skin and eyes, not a spacesuit or a helmet. I also have memories of a big gray alien, perhaps 6 feet tall, who I'd be brought to after the little guys were done with me. She definitely had a personality and a sense of presence about her. Her skin seemed to have more features. She wasn't just putty like the little guys. I don't know how I thought she was female, but perhaps her features were more slender. She'd look into my eyes with her large eyes, and she could see all of my thoughts. I could sense her in my head. She'd say things to me, clearly as an attempt to get me to believe them or buy into them. I could recognize them as not being my thoughts, but she didn't seem to care. Trying to push against her will is like pushing a car in neutral when it's coming down an incline. The car pushes you instead. Having her in my mind was a very disempowering experience, and I'd almost liken it to rape. But I don't know what that's really like, and I imagine it's way worse. But I'm trying to give you an idea of what it's like. It's not cool or fun at all. Someone else is in your innermost sanctum, your own mind and thoughts, and you didn't invite them. You don't want them there, and they're just doing whatever they want. At various times, she told me telepathically, don't make too much trash, or people will get sick, and stop cutting down so many trees. She also told me, "We're very grateful for your help. You're a big help to us in our project, and don't tell other people about us because they can't see us and will only get upset." She tried to make me feel positive about being there, but I wasn't having any of it. I only wanted them to take me back home. I had no idea where I was. It's like when you're a kid and a teacher tries to encourage you for doing something you don't want to do, like sweeping the floor or picking up after yourself. "You did a great job sweeping. You're such a big help." You don't care about helping the teacher. You just want to go and play or whatever. Well, I didn't care what the big one was saying. I just wanted to go home. They've never told me any secrets of the universe, and I've never had any hybrid alien or non-gray experience. I've had sleep paralysis experiences, and to me these are different. Just like a dream is different from a nightmare, and a nightmare is different from sleep paralysis. In sleep paralysis, I have a dream or a nightmare about a physical presence that's hostile or angry and is restraining me or physically accosting me. I panic for a few moments, find that I can't move, and then I jerk myself awake. Once I'm awake, it fades away quickly. Just like a nightmare becomes not so real when you wake up. With alien abductions, I don't find myself knowing that they've happened. I just wake up feeling like complete crap, maybe several days in a row. And I might have daydreams about aliens or remembering scenes from alien abduction shows. Sometimes I wake up in the early morning with a sense that they just left, and I won't be able to sleep for hours, and I'll be very aware and afraid of doors and windows. I'm a grown man, and when this happens, I'm not able to fall back asleep for at least an hour. As a kid, I remember finding an alien abduction book in the library, and it was like a door had been unlocked. My mom took us to McDonald's afterwards, and I finished the book there. I couldn't put it down, and for the next 3 days, I was in shock. It was like confirmation that they were real, that other people did know about them, and that I was really never safe from them. After that, as a teenager, I got my hands on all the alien abduction books and shows that I could find. They scared the crap out of me, but I had to keep reading them. I have very strong opinions about depictions of gray aliens, and there are some I consider to be very accurate, while others seem like a stylized interpretation by someone who's never seen them. Basically, the more realistic or human they look, with facial features such as cheeks, septum, nose, wrinkles, or under-the-skin musculature, the less authentic it seems to me. Also, the eyes may be completely insectoid, wrapping around the sides, not forward-facing or oval like a human's. I suppose a wasp or a mantis has the most alien-like eyes out of all the insects. There are certain cats I've seen that seem to have alien-shaped eyes. In my 20s, I started seeing a therapist, and during some really intense sessions, I recalled the memories of the aliens. The specific memories I outlined about, I don't believe the memories were blocked or anything. I just never dared to recall them because the whole thing is so terrifying. I believe it's a form of PTSD. It really does interfere with your sleep and mood. After that session, I was shaking so badly, the therapist wasn't going to release me to let me drive. She had to walk me through breathing exercises to get me to calm down. If I were someone other than myself, I'd be completely skeptical and conclude that the alien abduction experience is just another type of sleep paralysis, or that reading too many scary alien books will corrupt your mind, or that it's a cover memory for sexual abuse. But why would you dream up aliens? They're as small as toddlers and frail looking. They never touched me, sexually anyways. But me having had the experiences I had, I just can't believe it. Even if they devise an experiment where they hook people up to machines and have brainwaves proving that certain types of sleep paralysis is causing the alien abduction phenomenon, I'd still believe they were somehow real because the experiences feel real, even after you wake up, not like a dream or a nightmare or sleep paralysis. I don't believe that aliens are organic creatures that evolved on another planet and fly here in advanced ships. The physics of faster-than-light travel just doesn't work. The only explanation I can come up with is that either they're creatures that can travel interdimensionally, perhaps they come from another dimension themselves, or they exist as independent entities in human consciousness. I know both of those are too crazy to really be explanations, but to me, those creatures are much more than nightmares. I know that on a logical level, this is some kind of nightmare or brain disturbance, but let me tell you, the people that suffer from this really do suffer. Some people have made up a name for this, called post-abduction disorder. They aren't trying to say that abductions are real, but just trying to help people who suffer from it. Of course, it's not taken very seriously, and I understand why. But I do wish sufferers could talk more freely about it, without fear of ridicule or dismissal. I know it sounds completely crazy to people who haven't experienced it. I was driving home for the weekend from school at Indiana University. It takes me about 2 hours to get home, and I left Bloomington around 10 p.m. At exactly 10:53, I was on a rural stretch of the 2-lane highway I normally take home, and I noticed what appeared to be flashing lights behind me. I thought, great, I'm getting pulled over. So I turned onto the next country road, about a quarter mile from where I noticed the lights. As my car came to a stop and I opened my glove box to get out my registration and proof of insurance, the lights suddenly disappeared and no car drove past. Now, here's where my story takes a turn for the weird, and I'm sure you guys will think I'm just making it all up because it really does seem like something straight out of a typical UFO movie or story. The electronics in my car started to go haywire. The radio was randomly changing stations while the volume kept going up and down, and the dome light and headlights started to flicker and turn on and off. This was at 10:56 p.m. I started thinking to myself that my battery must be failing, or else I have a short somewhere in the electric system of my car. So I leaned down to pop the hood so I can take a look at the battery. And that's the last thing I remember doing. The next thing I know, I open my eyes and see nothing but the night sky, full of bright stars. It was a cold night, and it seemed like I'd never seen stars that bright in my life. I sat up and looked around, and I saw absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. I was in the middle of a field, surrounded by corn stalks left over from the recent harvest. As I started to come to my senses, I started freaking out. Where am I? Why am I asleep in the middle of a field? Where's my car? I got up and started walking toward the distant headlights I could see from a road about a half-mile away. When I got to the nearest intersection, I looked at the signs, which read 350 north and 50 west. I was half a mile away from my car, which was just right off the main road. I started walking toward the headlights I could see on the main road. I can't say how long it took me to walk the half mile, but it couldn't have been more than 10 or 15 minutes. When I arrived at my car, all the lights were out. My battery had died, which struck me as odd because I couldn't have been gone for that long. I looked at my phone, which was sitting on the passenger seat, and the time was 2:17 a.m. Over 3 hours had passed since I turned off onto the side road because of the flashing lights behind me. I remember sitting in the car completely dumbfounded, wondering what the hell had just happened to me. After about half an hour of just sitting there, I remembered that my battery was dead. So I got on the phone and called AAA to come out and give me a jump. It took about an hour for them to get out to me, since I was a good distance away from the nearest town, during which time I just sat in silence, running through the possible scenarios in my head concerning what had just happened. To this day, I couldn't tell you what really happened to me that night. All I know is I can't think of any plausible explanation as to why I woke up over a half mile away from my car in the middle of a cornfield over 3 hours after I had stopped. I've only shared this story with one other person, my uncle. I'm sure people would either look at me like I'm crazy or they would call BS on the whole story, and I can't blame them. If somebody came to me with a story like that so closely mirrors the stereotypical encounter story, I probably wouldn't believe them either. I've had multiple experiences with UFOs. The first time I had ever seen anything, I was 7 years old, living in Houston, Texas. I used to like to climb on top of my mom's Suburban in the driveway and stare at the stars. One night I saw an intensely bright floating light over the tree line, probably about a half mile away. I hollered, but nobody came to see it. I didn't see anything else until March of 2008. This experience happened somewhere between the 10th and the 15th, but I can't give a specific date because I was up for 4 days trying to come up with some sort of explanation to justify what I had seen. This was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. My mother lived in a garden home community, all houses the same size, all one story, and you had great visibility distance-wise. I walked out of my buddy's place at exactly 4 a.m. to a bright, starry night. When I walked out, something caught my eye to the left of me. I looked over and saw a bright blue, yellow, green, white, red, and orange strobing, flashing light floating silently to the left. I stood in awe at it and didn't want to go grab anyone because I didn't want to miss anything. I watched as it passed in front of the moon behind my friend's place, and I saw the outline of the craft. It was a teardrop, a sunflower seed type shape, and the craft seemed to have the lights being transmitted from the top half of it. It was almost as if it was transmitting some type of light pattern upward. It also had a dark, thin, smooth line of exhaust that disappeared 50 to 75 feet behind it. This all occurred no less than 400 yards away from me. After it passed the moon, I ran inside and grabbed someone. He saw it too, but it was too far away to make out what it was. I went home, which was only a few blocks away, and looked out from the driveway the same direction the first craft had come from. I saw 2 dim white lights slowly coming over the horizon at a slow pace, heading right towards me. I then ran inside and grabbed my mother out of bed. We stood there for about 20 minutes while 5 separate crafts flew over us. First came 2, then 2 more, then 1. They were about 6 to 7 minutes apart from each other, maybe 20 miles per hour, around 200 feet up, and completely silent. The way they looked from underneath was each one had 2 huge bright white lights, which were maybe 30 to 40 feet across each, but they were so bright it was hard to get a good estimate. They also had a pulsating red one between the white lights that dimmed and relit. I'd estimate from the size of the white lights that each craft was maybe between 150 to 200 feet wide. The last craft that flew over us flew over lower and slower than the first 4 had. Then it made a noise. It let out a sound that, even to this day, still haunts me. These crafts flew directly over us, and I believe that the sound was a kind of acknowledgement. Whatever was piloting it knew we were watching it, kind of like a hello. I immediately started crying. I had no idea what I was looking at, or had just heard. The second big experience I had occurred a couple of weeks later. I was standing in my driveway, listening to my iPod around 2 a.m. I decided to pause my iPod and turn on the back light. But I got this being watched feeling. I looked up, and directly above me was a trapezoid-shaped craft with rounded edges that had a dark red and black pulsating glowing outline. It was like flowing electricity. It couldn't have even been 75 feet up. I could have hit this thing with a rock. I stood there while it hovered directly above me, completely silent for maybe 10 to 15 seconds. It was making this kind of motion similar to the ball that Luke trained with in Star Wars. It hovered side to side and front to back in a smooth motion, never getting more than 20 feet away from its original position. It was extremely fascinating, but I was frozen stiff. After those few seconds, I waved one hand at it in a friendly manner. It then changed its light pattern and hovered away behind my house. Upon deeper inspection, the fact that it knew that I saw it, but made no effort to evade my detection, makes me think that it wanted me to follow it, although I was too freaked out to think about that at the time. I've seen the same craft on 3 other different occasions, once again in Tuscaloosa, once in Hoover, and once in Bessemer. The time I saw it in Hoover was at an apartment complex at the top of a huge hill with a great overlook. It was nighttime and I was with some friends. Over the overlook, I saw a gray craft facing my direction that looked similar to a Hoth fighter. Forgive the Star Wars references. and as soon as I saw it, it took off to the right silently and extremely quick. The times in Bessemer and Tuscaloosa, the trapezoid shape appeared in the sky solid white, stretched to twice its length. Then the bottom shot up to the front, like it hit light speed or something. I do frequently see what I like to call streaks. They look like shooting stars, only very low. They move slower, but they still have tails that stream behind them. They can also appear in many different colors. One strange story is one night when I had a dream in Tuscaloosa. In the dream, I couldn't see or hear anything, but I could feel things. I was laying on something cold and I felt what seemed like rubber between my legs. It was very strange to me since a lot of people who report abductions report sperm and eggs being taken for breeding programs. The next morning, I went to let the dog out in the backyard, which is very small. To the left of the patio, there was a solid white ring in the grass that was maybe 8 to 10 feet wide. I showed my mother and she told me that she had heard a noise that woke her up the night before, but she just dismissed it. Another extremely confusing experience I had occurred in my driveway in Tuscaloosa. To give you an idea of where this occurred, look up Shelton State Community College. The house was less than a quarter mile from the campus in the Inglewood neighborhood. It was nighttime and I heard this static that I could compare to a jet. I looked over and directly above the community college was a light blue slit in the sky. I'd say it was maybe 200 yards long, completely vertical, and had what looked like white electric currents coming off both sides of it. I looked at it and maybe about 25 white things shot out of the slit to the left, one at a time at a quick pace, leaving the trail behind it that I'd previously talked about. After they passed, the bottom of the slit went upward until it closed, and it made a strange sound, and then it was just gone. I've also had a bunch of experiences with orbs. Some solid lit that float across the sky or move in strange patterns, and some that brighten up to a great intensity and then fade as they pass. After that first big experience, I started doing some research because I was so confused. I understand that I've had an abnormally large amount of experiences, and I honestly can't tell you why. I wish I could. I found a type of UFO witness called a contactee. These people are similar to abductees, except they're kept up with. I have no idea why I've had so many experiences, and I've only listed a fraction of them. My best guess would be that since I acknowledged the presence of whatever it was that I was seeing, it decided to keep up with me. It's kind of a gift and a curse. There's so few people that I can talk with about it and be taken seriously. I want to seek hypnotherapy to see if there might be anything else I could uncover. I'm grateful, but still don't know much about my experiences. But I do know that there are things out there that simply can't be explained.